I've been sick to my stomach all day thinking about this. I, 24-year-old female, have been with my fiancé, 25-year-old male, for going on 6 years. We've been engaged for 3 of those years already. I'm feeling like I'm not valued in our relationship and that he doesn't care to listen to me. I'm going to list a few events details below. We nearly broke up on New Year's Day a few months ago, since I didn't want to stay at his family's New Year's Eve party until 3 a.m. We have spent Thanksgiving and Christmas with his family, and his family throws parties and gatherings that last until the sun rises. There's lots of dancing, drinking, singing, and loud music. It can get pretty overstimulating. His family is also from Mexico, and most of them don't speak English. Since I'm not entirely fluent in Spanish, a lot of times I just wind up sitting by myself or inside with the kids while he socializes. He does not really bring me into conversations. I have gotten way better at speaking Spanish from when we first started dating, and that's due to me making the effort to learn more about the language, and of course his culture. So anyway, with the New Year's party, we were there from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., and I wanted to leave, plus we have pets, and I wanted to check on them. We came in one car, who wouldn't, and he did not want to leave, since he said this was the first New Year's he got to spend with his mom, as she chooses, literally chooses, does not financially need to, nor is obligated, to work 6 days a week. She simply does not tell her boss no. I figured 8 hours of partying was enough, and he had never told me we were going to be staying so late. In the end, I wound up taking his mom's car home alone, and he didn't come home until around 5 a.m. A big argument about how our cultures are just too different ensued, and we nearly broke up. We constantly disagree on petty stuff that, in the end, accomplishes the same thing. It wasn't like this in the beginning of our relationship. I don't know if it's machismo nonsense or what. I will give him advice or a recommendation, and he'll ignore it. But his male uncles or cousins will then say the same stuff, and all of a sudden their word is law. This is a constant thing that I've called him out on, and it hasn't changed. He lies to me regarding finances. I pay for our car, which is entirely in his name. Our interest rate isn't even 1%, so it made no sense to refinance and get the car in my name. I've never missed a car payment. I give him the money to pay the car, $500 a month. At one point, he was not paying our car payment, and the vehicle got repossessed. Immediately, I had a breakdown thinking our car got stolen while I was at work, and he strung me along. He went along with it in front of my friends. We went down to the police station, and he would have had me file a false police report had they not been closed for the night. He finally admitted on the way home what happened, and I wound up forgiving him and telling him if he needed money to just ask, but not take it away from bills that I'm paying. I have a degenerative eye condition and other health issues that are currently pointing to a genetic collagen defect. I've been seeing doctors for years, even since before we were together. I was losing my ability to walk in high school due to severe joint pain. About a year and a half ago, I had to have surgery on my eyes to prevent blindness. I was in severe pain, sensitive to light, and of course, had a loss of vision while I recovered. Instead of helping me while I was recovering, he asked if he could go out drinking with his ex-stepdad, and I said yes, since I didn't want to be an inconvenience. I had a reduction not even a year ago and needed help showering and taking care of myself. He would forget to leave out water for me, would go out with his cousins knowing I needed help bathing, so I wouldn't get an infection, and barely helped cook anything. Even asking him to walk our dog was an inconvenience. My immune system is garbage. I get sick easily, and he doesn't seem to care. I was in the ER with an infection in my lymph nodes from a severe ear infection a few months ago, and he went home after a few hours and left me there, which was okay. I'm barely now getting over that infection about 4 months later. But a few weeks after my ER trip, he went out to a party, got really wasted, slumped out of a chair, and needed to go to the ER for a concussion. Guess who stayed the entire time, updated his insurance information for him after nagging at him to do it after a year before his benefits got canceled? They did LMFAO and helped with his follow-up care. Those are some pinpoint examples. He frequently tells me I'm making up scenarios or not remembering correctly, which I just default to since I grew up in a very hurtful home where gaslighting and manipulation were common. I'm sorry for the long post, but I appreciate anyone who read the entire thing. I could probably write a book about all of the nonsense. At the moment, I'm going to finish off our lease until the end of the year, and more than likely leave. I don't deserve this. If there's any advice anyone can give me on how to move forward and separate our lives, such as belonging, pets, etc., I'd appreciate it. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I didn't read the entire thing, but I got enough. You should break up, but I'd add one caveat. If you think you could save the relationship, and I don't know why you would, considering he was essentially stealing money from you and lies to your face. But you could tell him your overall feelings. Not, last New Year's Eve, I wanted to leave the party. More overall, like, I don't feel valued or respected. When you lied to me about the car, it was disrespectful. And I don't know how I can trust you going forward. I love your family, but I don't think you understand how isolating it is for me. Since I can't communicate with most of them, you go off and have fun and leave me alone. You know what? As I'm writing that, I feel ridiculous. This isn't salvageable. The car thing really makes this feel doomed. What about after you get married and get your own place? You'd have to pay the mortgage yourself out of fear of being evicted. Plus, the other stuff like the $20 you borrowed, and he didn't trust you to pay him back. Get out OP. Clean break. Comment 2. Definitely break up. Make sure you don't get pregnant before you move out. Being single will honestly be way easier than being with somebody who literally steals from you and can't be counted on to help you with health problems. You will feel such a relief when you move on. If you want to get out of your apartment earlier, depending on your relationship with your landlord, I'd consider talking to them and seeing if they feel okay about you breaking the lease. You might as well play the sympathy card. If they can get you out of there and jack up the rent, or they are just confident you will be quickly replaced, they might be open to the idea. As for the dog, I don't have a great suggestion. But if he is irresponsible and can't afford his own bills, he probably shouldn't be adding more expenses like a dog. I would fight to keep it. Now, for the update. Thanks for the support on my last post. I've got more to tell you. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, they did. Last week, my fiancé threw a surprise party for his cousin's birthday. I wasn't feeling up to it, but he insisted I come along. I should have trusted my gut and stayed home. At the party, I overheard him talking to his cousin about how he's been feeling trapped in our relationship and how he's been seeing someone else on the side. My heart sank. I confronted him right there in front of everyone. He tried to deny it, but the look on his face said it all. I was humiliated, angry, and felt so betrayed. I left the party immediately and went to stay with a friend. I didn't speak to him for days. He tried calling, texting, apologizing, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. I was done. Then, 2 days ago, I got a call from the bank. Turns out, he hadn't been paying the mortgage for our place for months. He'd been lying to me about it, just like with the car payments. The bank was threatening foreclosure. I was furious. All this time, I thought we were fine, but he was sinking us into debt behind my back. I had to take action. I called the bank and managed to work out a payment plan to keep the house for now. I'm going to have to find a roommate or something to help with the costs. It's going to be tough, but I can't lose the house. After sorting things out with the bank, I met with him one last time. I told him it was over for good. I couldn't be with someone who lied and cheated like he did. He didn't even fight it, just nodded and said he understood. It was like he was relieved, which only made it hurt more. I've been spending the last few days sorting through our stuff, deciding what to keep and what to get rid of. It's hard, but it's also kind of freeing. I'm starting to feel like I can breathe again, like I'm getting my life back. I'm also making plans for the pets. I'm going to keep our dog. She's always been more attached to me anyway. He can take the cat if he wants, but I don't know if he will. He's never been that responsible with them. It's going to be a long road ahead, but I'm ready for it. I'm ready to move on and find someone who actually respects and cares for me. I deserve better, and I'm going to make sure I get it. Thanks for reading. It helps to get it all out. My sister's been trapped by our controlling dad for years. But now she's moving in with me, and I'm teaching her to thrive. Despite his manipulation. Hi. I, 26 years old, will be having my sister, 17 years old, move in with me in about a year. I want to be as prepared as possible to help her get on the right track towards adult stability. She has been extremely isolated since the pandemic forced her to move to virtual learning. Our dad, 50 years old, has deliberately and maliciously worked to instill fear and doubt in her to prevent her from ever moving out. The goal was to make her doubt herself so much that she never leaves, essentially keeping her trapped there as a maid, emotional punching bag, and eventual cash cow when he allowed her to work. She doesn't know how to drive, has never held a job, has no friends or family connections, and has no plans for the future. He just allowed her to start cooking for herself last year. Our dad did this to her mother, my stepmother, 40 years old, absolutely insane age gap. And it worked perfectly. She's completely dependent on my dad because he's convinced her that the outside world is just so terrifying that he's the only one competent enough to handle it. Thankfully, his tactics didn't work on my sister, and she is desperate to leave. She'll be coming to live with me in another state, and we'll be cutting our dad off completely. I have the time and money to support her, but I don't have the experience of raising kids or anything. It might be easier if she was a baby. That way there'd be time to help her grow, but she's already going to be an adult. I'll have to undo the damage that's already there and help her grow into a functional adult essentially from scratch. I've tried looking up resources for foster parents of older kids, but the advice is mostly about how to lock up your valuables and handle them until they're old enough to be kicked out. Yeah, not super helpful. The basics like a bed and dresser, etc. are handled. I was able to figure out that much at least, LOL. But the emotional stuff and adult future stuff has really got me in a bind. Like, I'll have to teach her how to drive, how to look for jobs, how to socialize. And college? I never even went to college myself. I have enough money for the basics to live a normal life, but I certainly don't have enough to make a college fund. Where do young adults go to make friends? This will be a completely different area than the one she's used to, and it's not like she has any school friends to keep in touch with. And relationships? I don't think she's even dated anyone in her entire life. I'll definitely have to get her into therapy, but she doesn't have insurance. And it's not like I can add her to mine. She's not my kid. Don't misunderstand. I am 100% willing to throw everything I have into my sister, but I don't know how to support her. She has no adult experiences or any faith in herself to handle adult situations. The world is not exactly being kind to those just starting out either. Any advice is appreciated. Other than advice telling me, it's not your problem. Let your sister figure it out and suffer on your own. I know I'm not her parent, but I love my sister and I won't be throwing her to the wolves just because I have no legal obligation to help. Thank you in advance. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. How close is she to turning 18? If she just packs her things at 17 and moves several states over, your father can absolutely report her as a runaway and have her return to his household as long as there is not enough evidence to prove abuse or neglect to CPS. Kind of sounds like there isn't, even though he's not a good dad. As long as she was being clothed, fed, is clean, etc. In dad's home, then there's not a lot that CPS can do. Comment 2. I suggest contacting the local high school and asking about the process for enrollment. You might not need to be her parent to enroll her. If the plan is to cut contact from your parents, I think pursuing emancipation for your sister might be easier than having you adopt her. When it comes to enrollment, ask about placement testing, since she's only been doing remote learning. She might be behind and not realize. Now for the update. Thanks for sticking around for this update. So my sister finally moved in with me. And let me tell you, it's been interesting to say the least. But not the fun kind. It's like one of those rides that jerks you around until you're not sure which way is up. First off, my neighbor, who I thought was a decent guy, turned out to be a real piece of work. He seemed friendly at first, always waving hello. But then he started getting nosy, asking about my sister, making comments about how nice it was to have fresh blood in the neighborhood. It gave me the creeps. I brushed it off until one day, I caught him trying to chat up my sister when she was getting the mail. He was all smiles and charm, but the moment she mentioned she was learning to drive, his tune changed. He offered to give her lessons, said it would be their little secret. Red flags went up all over the place. I confronted him, told him to back off, and thought that was the end of it. But no, he started spreading rumors about us, saying my sister was trouble, that I was in over my head. It got back to me through a friend, and I was livid. I had a showdown with him on his front lawn, told him to stay away from us or I'd call the cops. He just laughed, said he knew people, that I couldn't touch him. But I wasn't having any of it. I cut him off, told everyone the truth about him, and now he's the one getting the cold shoulder from the neighborhood. Good riddance. In the midst of all that, my sister was struggling. She was trying to get a job, but her confidence was shot. Every rejection felt like a confirmation of our dad's lies. I kept pushing her, maybe too hard, because I wanted her to see she could do it. Finally, she landed a gig at a local bookstore, and I was so proud of her. But then, she started coming home upset, talking about her boss, how he was always on her case, making her stay late, piling on work. It didn't sit right with me. I went to the bookstore, pretended to browse, and watched. Her boss was a tyrant, all right. He was belittling her in front of customers, making snide remarks. I saw red. I waited until the end of her shift, confronted him about his behavior. He tried to brush me off, said it was none of my business, but I wasn't having it. I told him if he didn't back off, I'd make it my business. I must have struck a nerve because he backed down, started treating her better. She's still there, and she's actually starting to like it now that she's not being harassed. And then there was the car situation. I'd been teaching her to drive, and she was doing great, but we needed a car for her. I found a decent used one, nothing fancy, but it ran well. The seller seemed honest, but after a week, the car started having issues. I took it to a mechanic, and he told me it was a lemon, that the seller had covered up a bunch of problems. I was furious. I went back to the seller, ready to tear into him, but he was gone, no trace. I felt like such an idiot. I'd wanted to help my sister, and instead I'd wasted money we couldn't afford to lose. But here's the thing, my sister. She stepped up. She said we'd figure it out together. She started taking extra shifts at the bookstore, saving every penny. I did the same. We managed to get the car fixed, and it's running fine now. It was a hard lesson, but we learned it together. So, yeah, it's been a chaotic 2 weeks. But through all the mess, my sister is growing stronger, more confident. She's making friends at work, she's driving, and she's starting to plan for the future. It's not easy, but we're getting there, one step at a time. Thanks for reading. My spouse insists on a family trip. Despite our money troubles. So I take control and sell their prized baseball card collection to fund my own dream vacation. 1. Timing is overall bad. I'm about to go down to zero income, as I just got laid off and have to hunt for a new job. Plus, if I get a new job, I would probably have to cancel the plans for the trip. To be fair, we can easily afford the trip on his income. 2. I do not want to spend 7 or 8 nights with his family, even worse, on some kind of shallow frou-frou trip. I have thought about maybe making part of the trip solo and part with them. 3. I do not want to spend this long with his family, but he is very, very, very protective of them. I've already stepped on his toes once or twice, so it's hard to tell him that. 4. We could have prepared for 2 trips if we'd known about this earlier, but I really don't want to cancel my trip to the festival I haven't done in years. Seems a little unfair they swoop in last minute, and now I'm asked to give up something important to me. Any ideas for having what's really several conversations with him? Edit. Problem solved. Thanks for all the helpful advice. Reading all this really helped me see that I was letting both my lack of interest in the trip and my annoyance at my husband for not standing up to his family and telling them we needed a definite on those trips earlier cloud my ability to creatively solution. It really annoys me that his sibling with kids and a frick ton of money basically calls the shots and just decides all of a sudden that we're going on this trip on their family schedule, and I was letting that get in my way. One thing I also forgot to mention is 2 of the trips we planned that would have to be canceled involve my parents who are already planning. 1. I shared my concerns with my husband and laid out a firm limitation on the number of nights I will spend on his family trip because it's just a lot being with all of them for a week. 2. I'm going to book the trip as long as I can cancel my participation and get flight credit. It's just unlikely I will start a job before then. 3. I'm going to challenge myself to find ways to earn some money while I'm job hunting. My participation in the family trip gets canceled if any of the below. I end up not earning enough money before the trip. I'm willing to let my husband pay for a little bit of my part, but I need to at least have had some success before then. I can't manage to work in all 3 trips. My parents have already been planning the other 2 trips with me, and I can't cancel on them because my husband basically screwed up the scheduling here. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I'm all for you deciding that your already planned trip takes precedence, but I don't think you can go on your own trip and claim that the timing of travel is bad, and you need to save money by not traveling, and it was unfair of them not to tell you sooner when it sounds like they did tell you sooner, and you just didn't believe them. You're going to have to pick one story or the other and stick to it with his family, even if the reality is more complicated. In your shoes, I think I would probably encourage your husband to go and have a great time, but stick to, unfortunately, I already have a conflict, so I'm going to have to miss this one and just travel separately. Send your in-laws a very nice anniversary gift and note to soothe some of the sting. But first, I'd think hard about whether the relationships are such that this is going to get held over your head for years. And if so, whether the festival is really worth it. Comment 2. I think your best bet is to suck it up and go on the in-law trip. However, I would try to find some separate activities or things that interest you that you and your husband can do alone while on the trip. Part of marital harmony is sometimes putting what your spouse wants ahead of what you want. Sure, a solo trip sounds more fun than a big in-law trip, but how much do you care about what your husband wants? You said yourself the big trip never happens, so you risk major resentment if you derail it the first time it actually does. Also, you note that you're traveling on a trip with your family in the future. Another breeding ground for resentment if you go on your family's trip and make a stink about this. Now, for the update, thanks for sticking around for the update. So, where do I even start? Remember how I was laid off and scrambling to figure out the trip situation? Well, things went from bad to worse. I found out my husband had been hiding something big. He lost his job too, a month ago, and didn't tell me because he didn't want to stress me out. Great, right? Now we're both jobless, and here I was, worried about a trip. But wait, it gets better. His family, the ones we're supposed to go on this trip with, they all knew and didn't say a word to me. I guess they thought it was his place to tell me, but it felt like a betrayal. I mean, we're supposed to be family, aren't we? In the middle of all this, my husband's sister, the one with the money and the plans, she decides to throw a curveball. She announces she's getting married. On the trip. And guess who's footing the bill? That's right, her. She's paying for everything, the whole family trip, as her wedding extravaganza. So now, not only am I stuck going, but I'm also going to a wedding I had no desire to attend in the first place. I tried to talk to my husband about it, about how I felt, but he just shut down. He's so protective of them. And now at the wedding, it's like I can't say anything without looking like the villain. So I caved. I agreed to go on the trip, to the wedding, to all of it. I guess I just accepted that this is how it's going to be. But then, my parents. Remember the trips we planned with them? They're heartbroken. They were looking forward to our time together, and now I have to tell them it's not happening. I feel like I'm choosing his family over mine, and it's eating me up inside. And to top it all off, I started doing odd jobs to make some money, and it's like the universe is laughing at me. I'm walking dogs, babysitting, you name it. It's humbling, and not in a good way. I'm a professional, or at least I was, and now I'm picking up after pets and kids for a few bucks here and there. So here I am, jobless, about to go on a trip I don't want to go on, to a wedding I care nothing about, and I'm working jobs I never thought I'd be doing. And through all of this, I'm trying to keep a smile on my face for my husband. who's clearly struggling with his own issues. But you know what? I'll get through this. I have to. There's no other choice. I'll go on this trip, I'll smile and dance at the wedding, and I'll keep doing these odd jobs. Because that's what you do, right? You keep going, even when it feels like everything's falling apart. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.